Yo, what's going on gamers? It's Ryan 6 days a week, and we started out this wipe by playing Slayer Fighter, which I honestly think is one of the strongest solo classes at the moment, especially for Goblin Caves, now that we're back to tighter 3x3 layout. This video is going to go over how you should be building this class and taking on fights. I'll first begin by briefly talking about the build, but you can skip to the next chapter if you just want to see the PvP. Now, let's just bring up the skills and perks on screen. Alright. Since this is for solo play, in terms of gear, you're going to want to prioritize movement speed and flat damage. Those are your priority stats, period. You can later build tall and other useful attributes like dexterity, strength, and vigor, but at minimum, you should be at least 95% unarmed movement speed with plus additional or plus true damage on the gear pieces that allow them. Everything else comes after. And by 95%, I mean that's the baseline. You should get well above 100% if you can. For your melee weapons, I am caught between two combinations, the arming sword with the short sword or the falchion with the castellan dagger. The falchion with the castellan dagger does have more reach, damage, and more on-hit slow, but now that plus additional damage ceiling has been increased, I'm finding some more value in the arming sword and short sword pair, especially for its attack combo, right click, left click, which deals an insane amount of burst damage and synergizes well with combo attack, the perk. At the end of the day though, it really is just personal preference. Now, with this build, my ranged secondary is gonna have to be the crossbow, just due to our perk selection. Okay, now let's move on to 1v1 PvP. I'll add some light commentary over this footage, but other than that, just pay attention to the general flow of the fights. The Slayer Fighter doesn't have a high mechanical ceiling, since there aren't any unique combat mechanics behind the weapons they can use, so fights with this build are more so won by decision making and positioning. In this first clip, we're matched up against a Slayer Fighter. I actually don't know what class they are at the time. I just hear footsteps right above me, so I want to go up, see what they are, and then decide to fight from then. At this point, I know it's a Slayer Fighter. I missed my crossy shot, so I need to get the fight advantage in some other way. Now that I have the HP advantage, I could go in and burst them down. This particular trade is why I prefer Adrenaline Rush over Second Wind. You get a lot more value out of it, especially in the short time to kill with Slayer Fighter classes. In this next clip, we're up against a Curse Lock, which, for those who do not know, they usually run Torture Mastery, which doubles the cost or HP costs of each of their spells. The more spells you can bait out, the better. And hitting the spell through the wood, steps or the floor, is incredibly difficult. It has to be pinpoint accurate. In this case, we get out around 4 spells. I assume they're running Phantom Eyes here, so I want to close the gap and force them to pop it. However, they do pop Demon Form, which I honestly make the mistake of running instead of trying to just finish them off in that exchange. I'm now just trying to dodge and kite and bait out more HP. Thankfully, this door was open. Normally, this would be a mistake running into that corner while they're in demon form. But in our case, we just got lucky. This is not something I planned ahead. Now hearing them turn back into human form, I'm assuming that they're low, since, well, you can't heal while you're in demon form if your skill is on cooldown. We finish them off with one more headshot, and get some nice upgrades. A little tip, if you're trying to dodge projectiles, in this game or any game, avoid jumping. It makes your path super predictable, opposed to just strafing on the ground. Now, this next fight I actually played pretty sloppily, but I do want to point out one important mechanic in Dark and Darker that is especially useful for the Slayer Fighter, since they use the crossbow. It is the hot swap. Typically, when you pull out a crossbow and put it away by pressing X or your stow key, you'll be slowed down for a period of time. In this case, if you first swap to utility, and then stow your weapons, the slowdown is nearly non-existent. It may be patched in the future, but for now, I always hit 3 and then X if I had the crossbow out. Now, I did say I played the fight poorly in this clip, and you're going to see why in a second. Right here, we jump the Hydra to try to burst them down as they're life draining. However, they pop Blow Corruption. This is when I try to stall out the duration of Blow Corruption, but I jump in just too quickly. There's probably about half a second left in that BOC. Thankfully, they hit me in the shoulder and it did not kill us. Otherwise, I would have lost that fight. Now, I am showing a lot of Warlock clips, and that's because I want to highlight the importance of giving yourself any advantage you can before you enter melee range. This is especially true with Blow Corruption Warlocks, since they're typically going to be running Dark Reflection as well. And at full stacks, going in at just melee, you will lose the trade. You need both the health advantage in this fight, as well as the Dark Reflection to be on cooldown. And that means getting any kind of physical damage off to proc it. That could be torches, axes, or a crossy. I'm serious here. Dark and Darker is not a game that you should be playing fairly. Use your tools to your advantage. There's a reason why you have them, right? Now, another reason why move speed is so important is it lets you pick and choose your fights. One of the worst matchups for Slayer Fighter is any plate wearing class, like Plate Cleric or Plate Sword and Shield Fighter. In this case, we're seeing the perspective of a plate fighter. Now, I do want to say there's no shame in running. You can always revisit fights later, trust me. This Slayer Fighter, even though they managed to get themselves cornered here for a second, had many opportunities to run and reset the fight. They had the move speed advantage. Now, this is another big tip in game. When putting your weapons away, always try to jump before you do it. Your momentum will stick with you as you're in the air, so you actually don't get slowed until you touch the ground again. If this fighter jumped right before swapping back to being unarmed, they might have escaped there, as they built up a good amount of move speed. Alright, now let's flip the perspective. We're gonna see me as a Slayer Fighter against a plate fighter. And honestly, when against plate, you have to give yourself the advantage before you engage in any melee trade. I'm serious. You need to use your movement to your advantage. If they give you the ranged fight, just take the ranged fight. They're going to be a much slower target to hit. If they try to close the gap, just kite back, close doors, reload the crossbow, and don't melee trade until you for sure have the advantage. Now, I will end the video here, since I just want to lay down the basic rules as playing as a Slayer Fighter. But in the next video in this series, we are going to explore building up Dexterity as a single focus stat. Same with Vigor and Strength, just to showcase how those different attributes really affect the build. Also, I want to give a big shout out to The Lore and Wilson's Game. They're both incredible solo Slayer fighters with some great PvP videos for those who are interested in getting to know more about this build. Hit them up on Twitch and YouTube, the links can be found in the description. Alright gamers, thank you as always for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.